Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. All right. Obviously, this time change works for people. I'm happy to see all of you here. Um, all right. Is anyone totally new to yin? Like you've never done yin before? No. Good. Okay. So I think we're going to start just flat on our backs. You can stretch out into Shavasana for a few minutes and just start to get a sense of how your body feels. If you feel like you need to take a big full body stretch before you settle in, feel free to do that. Also, if you find that there is some tightness or tension or discomfort in your low back, you can bend your knees and take your feet out to the edges of your mat and then let your knees come together. And then usually that provides a nice passive release to the muscles in the low back. So, just as a reminder, yin is a very still, quiet practice. And there are some techniques that can help you have a better experience. The stillness of it can be challenging for some people. It can be a physical challenge, it can be a mental challenge, sometimes it can be an emotional challenge. Those techniques include focusing on your breath. And generally, just a slow, steady breath works best. But if you find that you're struggling, you can also practice just a gentle ujjayi breath, an ocean breath, just a little constriction at the back of the throat so that the breath starts to make a soft whispering sound that resembles the ocean. This shouldn't feel or sound forced or loud. Again, it's nice and gentle. So maybe the breath is a little more audible to you, maybe a little more audible to someone who's very close to you physically. But other than that, um, we shouldn't really hear it throughout the room. So take a few moments now and just see if you can find a slow, steady breath or even a soft ujjayi breath. The second technique that we can use in our yin practice is the practice of vipassana meditation, which is best known as a body scan. So just kind of noticing sensations in the body and noticing those in a non reactive, non judgmental way, just with curiosity and attentiveness. So, if you like, take a moment now to guide yourself through a body scan, head to toe, or toes to head if you prefer. And maybe just notice any areas where you feel sensation, and maybe try to refrain from labeling those sensations as good or bad. Just notice what is. You have the option of remaining exactly where you are, even for the rest of the class if you want. And maybe that's exactly what you need right now. Maybe you just want to focus on your breath or practice your body scan. But if you feel the urge to move, the urge to change positions, start to make your way up into a seated position. Our first yin pose will be butterfly. And in our regular yoga classes, that's known as Baddha Konasana or cobbler's pose. You can slide your hands under your feet and sit up nice and tall for a moment. If this position is a little too intense for you and you would rather just sit cross legged, that's fine too. So while you're sitting here, draw your attention to your hip sockets in particular, and start to notice sensations there. Notice whether there's any tightness or gripping or holding. If you find that there is, you might start to focus on your exhales and see if you can start to release that tension. In yin, we need to relax the muscles so that we can access the connective tissue. And we never force anything. We just sit and listen and wait for the body to invite us to go a little deeper if it does. So just notice now, maybe you want to lean forward a little bit and keep your back nice and straight as you do so that you start to feel a little sensation in the low back. It might feel like stretching, it might feel like traction. And you can either continue to focus your attention on the hips or the low back, or you can choose to focus on your breath. One of the principles of Yin Yoga is that you come into a pose to an appropriate depth, which is pretty vague. But we want to experience sensation. We want to experience a stretch or stress, but we don't want to push it so far that it becomes painful or that we're not able to sustain it for time. If you feel like you're ready to go a little bit further, go ahead and let your spine round a little bit, and you can bring your palms out in front of you, or maybe even let the forearms come down to the mat or to blocks or to a bolster. And as you continue to focus on the sensations in your body and focus on your breath, just listen for any cues that the body is ready to go further. So you'll just come into this forward fold to your appropriate depth, or a comfortable edge, as it's sometimes called. In yin, we never want to go completely to our maximum. We always want to hold back from that. Every once in a while, you might find it helpful to do a quick scan of the body and notice whether you're holding tension anywhere. And maybe see if you can release that. Very slowly start to make your way up into an upright position again. And you can actually use your hands to draw your knees back together to kind of loosen up that tension that we've created. Just lean back onto your forearms, take your feet out wide, and very slowly windshield wiper the legs side to side. So just letting the knees drop to one side and then the other. We always want to move slowly and mindfully coming out of a yin pose. It's natural to feel a little bit of achiness as you're coming out of it, but there should never be anything that feels like sharp pain or burning or numbness. But that achiness is actually a sign that you're doing something beneficial. All right, bring your knees back to center and then make your way up into a seated position again. We're going to go into a half butterfly. So I want you to stretch your left leg out in front of you. And then right foot on the inside of the left thigh. If you have, bones that are pressing into your mat or the floor, you can pad that with a blanket or a towel or whatever you have handy. So from here, we're going to work our way into a forward fold, just kind of folding over that straight leg. If the back of your leg is very tight, you can roll up a yoga mat or a towel or something just to kind of support that knee and kind of take the pressure off. Otherwise, just kind of go in at your own pace. Once again, just kind of listening to the body and figuring out what your appropriate depth is. So the first principle of Yin Yoga was coming to an appropriate depth. The second is resolving to be still, which is easier said than done. There are two exceptions to that second principle. The first exception is if you feel anything that is truly painful and not simply intense sensation. Again, pain would be identified as something sharp, acute, tearing, burning, numbness. The second exception to resolving to be still is when the body invites you to go a little further. So at that point, it's appropriate to maybe drop into your forward fold a little more. When we first go into a pose, sometimes there's this freak out phase where our body and our mind doesn't believe that we can sustain the pose. But if we can hold that resolution to be still and we can focus on our breath, or maybe practice our vipassana, our body scans, or noting, we find that we can remain still and receive the benefits of the pose. Take a moment to check in with your mind this time. Notice what's happening in the mind, whether it's wandering or whether it's remaining present. If the mind does start to wander, just notice where it wanders to and then gently bring it back. Very slowly start to make your way back to an upright position. Just kind of noticing the sensations as you go. Bring your right knee up and stretch your right leg out in front of you, and you can resituate your sit bones if you want to. And then when you feel ready, bend your left leg and very slowly start to make your way back into your forward fold over the right leg. You might just start by noticing the differences between this side and the other. Again, just avoiding labeling that as good or bad, just noticing what is. The third principle of Yin Yoga is holding for time. And that is the magic ingredient that benefits us physiologically. So when we hold the stress of a pose for a long time, our tissues, particularly the connective tissues that we're targeting, deform, reform, and gradually become stronger and thicker and longer. And it's that long, gentle pressure that coaxes these tissues into being strengthened and lengthened. So it's time, not intensity. So we're always looking for that middle way. Very slowly start to make your way back to an upright position. You can bring your left knee back up and then go ahead and bend your right leg. We're going to come back into that windshield wiper counter pose. So just leaning back on the forearms, slowly and gently moving the legs side to side. And then bringing the knees back up. Come back to an upright position. Stretch the legs out. We're going to do one more forward fold. Both legs out in front. In Yin, this is known as caterpillar. So just channel your inner caterpillar. Start to walk your hands forward again. If you need to bend the knees, you can put some support under there if you want to. And just being careful not to go too far, just finding that comfortable edge. So, at times in our yin practice, regardless of how careful we are to only go to an appropriate depth, we can still sometimes feel some strong sensations. Sometimes those are physical, sometimes they're mental, sometimes they're emotional. There are generally four reactions we can have to those strong sensations. The first is running away from what is happening. And generally, that involves like backing out of the pose, or that usually occurs in that first 30 seconds, that freak out phase. Again, if we can remain calm and breathe, we can usually get past that. Sometimes we try to change what is happening, maybe by slightly shifting our position. Sometimes we just give up and suffer through and just kind of grin and bear it. But the last reaction is the one that is truly skillful, truly yin like, and that is accepting what is happening. So just maintaining that mindset of curiosity and acceptance. So as you become more adept in your yin practice, you might start to notice these different reactions that you have to strong sensations. Very slowly start to make your way up. And rather than windshield wiper this time, we're going to bend our knees, plant our feet about hips distance apart. Place your palms behind you, point your fingers towards your feet, and then come up into reverse tabletop very slowly. So we're just kind of re engaging those muscles that we've been stretching for the last half hour. And very slowly come back down. And then slowly and mindfully make your way onto your belly. If you feel like you want to pause and tabletop for a moment and maybe move around a little, cat cow or two, that's fine. And then when you're ready, just come all the way down onto your belly. And we're going to come into Sphinx pose. So if you feel a lot of compression in your low back in Sphinx pose, there are a couple of options. One is to take your feet out a little bit wider, and usually that does the trick. If it doesn't, and you wait and breathe past the freak out phase and it's still not happening for you, you can opt for crocodile instead, which is just to cross your palms or your forearms and rest your forehead there. Still a nice gentle back bend. You won't get all of the benefits that you would from a Sphinx pose, but it's still reversing all the forward bending that we've been doing. So this is a good place to do a body scan. And just notice where you're holding tension. One of the most common places in this pose is to hold it around the shoulders where you're kind of scrunching your shoulders up towards your ears. So just try to move the shoulders away from the ears. One thing that sets Yin Yoga apart from our normal yoga practice is that we're not so concerned with alignment. So if you feel like you have to have your elbows under your shoulders here, just know that you can move your elbows forward or back or out or in or whatever you need to do to facilitate a little more relaxation in the body. One of the things that's really fascinating about holding these poses for longer periods of time is that you can really notice how the sensations you're feeling change. Maybe the tightness in your low back starts to give way to warmth instead. We'll take a short intermission from our back bend just by taking the elbows out to the sides, coming all the way down. And you can either turn your head to one side or you can come to crocodile, just letting your forehead rest on your hands or your forearms. You can windshield wiper your legs here too, just by bending your knees and then just letting the shins go side to side. If you're windshield wipering the legs, go ahead and straighten the legs again. We're going to come up into Sphinx pose one more time. And you can either remain right here or you can take your palms out wider and then press up into seal pose. So seal isn't for everyone. If you haven't tried it before, just maybe give it about 30 seconds or so. And if you haven't settled in by that, then you can come back into your Sphinx pose. If you're in seal, very slowly bring your elbows back down to the mat. Maybe take a breath or two in Sphinx pose. And then go ahead and lower all the way to the mat. If you had your head turned to one side, turn your head to the opposite side. And once again, if you like, you can slowly windshield wiper the shins side to side. And then go ahead and straighten your legs out again. And slowly make your way up into tabletop. Again, you can pause here if you want. Maybe do a couple cat cows or just maybe in and out of child's pose. And then when you're ready, go ahead and make your way onto your back. So lying on your back with your knees bent and your feet planted, press down through your feet, shift your hips over to the right, and then pick up your feet and draw your knees in towards your chest. Take your arms out to a T, and on an exhale, let your legs fall to the left into a reclined twist. If you like, you can turn your head towards your right hand. But before you do, you might consider just kind of bringing your left ear towards your left shoulder and then turning your head towards your right hand. Scan the body for any tension or holding or gripping. If you find any, see if you can release it with an exhale. Slowly start to make your way back to center. And as you set your feet down on the mat, just take a moment in the center. And then when you feel ready, shift your hips to the left. Pick up the feet, draw the knees in, and slowly let them fall to the right. Slowly start to come back to center. Set your feet down on the mat, recenter your hips. And you might just take a few breaths here before stretching out into Shavasana. When you feel ready, you can set yourself up for Shavasana. Maybe covering up with a blanket or placing a bolster under your knees. Or doing whatever you like to do to help yourself settle in. As you're settling into Shavasana, you might do one final body scan, just noticing any sensations in the body. Maybe any areas of warmth. Anywhere the body is making contact with the mat. Any sensations of cold. And once again, just trying not to label those sensations as good or bad. And just notice what is. And then just let go of any effort, mental or physical. Start to bring your awareness back to your breath. If you like, you can start to make small movements with the body, maybe the fingers and toes, or maybe gently moving the head side to side. And then when you feel ready, slowly and mindfully make your way up into a seated position. Bring your hands to heart center, lower your chin towards your chest, and just take a moment to notice the effects of this practice. Notice how your body feels. Notice the quality of your breath, and notice your state of mind. Take a nice deep inhale and a long, slow exhale. Thank you for practicing with me today. Have a peaceful evening. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you, Angela.
Thank you. Have a great night.